Hey, how's it going? This is Reviews This Week number 2, and this week we're going to be taking a look at Black Widow, Promising Young Woman, and The Gentleman. And now I am crazy late to all three of these movies, so I'm not gonna give a spoiler-free review. I'm gonna dive right into the story and say exactly what I think about this. So if you haven't seen these movies, just be warned now. I'm gonna be spoiling the shit out of them. So without further ado, let's get started with Black Widow. Now, Black Widow is essentially the first Phase 4 Marvel movie, and this is a movie that should have came out in 2014 to 2016 at the latest. It should have come out either right after Civil War or right before Civil War. And this movie is just so late to the party, and you can tell that Marvel was waiting to see how Captain Marvel would do first, but the fans were begging for a Black Widow movie, and now it's here, and it fucking sucks. I wish I had good things to say about this movie. Besides, I like Florence Pugh and everything she's in. David Harbour's okay, and Scarlett Johansson is always good as Black Widow. The action is all right at best. Taskmaster, I had it spoiled for me going in, so I knew that it was going to be a disappointing reveal. But still, it did not make up for the fact that they CGI'd a little girl head onto a full-grown man's body just to try and trick us into thinking it was a man. But whatever. That's not even the real villain. The real villain is some dude that hurts Black Widow through if she smells him, then she can't fight him because it's the pheromones. It's a pheromone lock that he gives off, and so if she smells him, she can't fight him. That is the goofiest shit ever. I know I'm jumping all over the place and I'm starting at the end of the movie, but I just have to get out how goofy this movie is. And you have to take a movie like Shang-Chi, for example, that is very, very whimsical and very fantastical in a lot of ways, but keeps it very grounded when it needs to be for the most part. And I just don't understand what Marvel was trying to do with this movie. It's so grounded and trying to be realistic, but then the whole third act takes place in a sky base run by a man who is invincible if you can smell him. It's just idiotic. And the pacing, for the first 40 minutes, you just sit back and think, what's this movie about? And then for the next 20 minutes after that, you say, oh, it's about Florence Pugh and Scarlett Johansson trying to find the Red Room. And then 20 minutes after that, they get kidnapped by a bunch of guys, and then they take them to the Red Room. So they don't do shit all. The first half of this movie is so pointless, and then the second half is just them fighting their way out of the Red Room. And it's like, well, that's the whole point. Like, you guys, they didn't even find it themselves. They had to get abducted and taken hostage to the Red Room. And yeah, I just don't know why this movie existed. Maybe to give Scarlett Johansson a send-off, even though she just ended up suing them anyways. Maybe it was just to introduce Florence Pugh, but I feel like you could have introduced her maybe in the Hawkeye series, because I know she's going to return for that. This movie, to me, if it would have been released 4 or 5 years ago, I'd say, it's okay, it's not that good, but at least we got a Black Widow movie. But now it's just not good and pointless. So if you haven't seen this, don't watch it. Next up, I want to talk about The Gentleman. Now, this is pretty fresh on my mind. I just watched it last night. And for the most part, I liked it. I'm not a huge Guy Ritchie fan, mostly just because I haven't seen most of his movies. So I didn't really have anything to compare this to. And I was along for the ride for the most part. I thought it was entertaining. The story moved along at not a bad pace. It's almost 2 hours, but I was interested the whole time. I heard a lot of people say it was hard to follow. It's really not that hard to follow. It's really just 2-3 plot lines. It's just all narrated by Hugh Grant, so you just have to kind of assume he's telling the truth and spot where he's lying. You just have to do a little bit of your own thinking. It's really not hard to follow. But the characters were hilarious. Colin Farrell and Hugh Grant carried this movie. Charlie Hunnam and Matthew McConaughey, amazing as always, but Colin Farrell made me laugh every time he was on screen. I do have quite a few gripes with this movie. If I could just get my thought out, I'd say it's like a 7 out of 10 movie. It's pretty good. But the gripes, this movie's racist. This movie's oddly racist, like very xenophobic. Henry Golding plays a character named Dry Eyes. Any excuse they get to make an Asian joke, they take it. Any excuse they take to make any type of racist joke to any character that's not white, they will take it. It just seems, I don't know. And Matthew McConaughey's wife is really the only female character, and she's so underdeveloped that I just called her Matthew McConaughey's wife. She's made out to be this badass that's equal to Matthew McConaughey, but anytime you see her, she's just taking orders or giving them to people who aren't even listening to her. And then in the climax, spoiler, she shoots 2 people, so you think, oh, that's kind of badass. But then she really just gets humiliated and degraded after that and has to be saved by her husband. And after what happens to her, it's like, okay, we never get another scene with her until the very end of the movie. And then when we get that other scene with her, she's just seducing Matthew McConaughey. So this is a dad's movie, if I could say that. I'm not trying to take anything away from dads. I'm not trying to say dads are racist, but I just don't think dads will care about this like I do. Like, it's just a lot of Asian jokes. The only female character really gets degraded and is really only used as a prop for Matthew McConaughey to scream, "My wife!" at the end of the movie. And I don't know. It's pretty good. But if you are easily offended and sick of movies filled with straight white dudes, skip this. Lastly, I want to talk about Promising Young Woman. Now, I saved this for last intentionally because I feel like I have a lot to say about this movie and it might be a little long-winded. So, yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, I would just recommend going and seeing it just because whatever your opinion is of this movie, it will be defined by the last 10 minutes, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. So if you really want to create your own opinion on this movie, really just go see it for yourself. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. Now, let me get everything good out of the way just before I get to my gripes. Carey Mulligan carries this movie. She fucking kills it. Bo Burnham is great as usual, but Carey Mulligan absolutely kills it. She plays this character that carries so much weight and cares about so much stuff, but can't show it. Doesn't even want to show it to herself. And you can tell, you can see it in her. So she really pulls off this just character-defining performance that I was incredibly entranced by the whole time. And the colors in this movie really just pop. It really skates over the subject matter in a way where the vibe of the movie is just so much more fun than what's actually going on. And I really loved 90% of this movie. I was so into this movie for pretty much the entire runtime. I was along for the ride. Everything she did, I was like, oh, fuck these guys. We have to get back at Al Monroe. I was with the cause almost the entire time. I know that she was doing some shitty things to some people, but I feel it felt cathartic in a way. And she never crossed the line too much. She really never went as close to what actually happened to her friend Nina. And so she just makes for a character that's, really unlikable in a lot of ways, but also likable and like you can root for what she's doing. But that's just got to be everything good I say about this movie. Before I get the ending out of the way, I understand what it's meant to do. It's meant to subvert our expectations and subvert the Hollywood standard of what a movie like this should be. But a movie like this should be that. A movie like this shouldn't end up with 2 dead victims and everyone else is fine. this, like, the message that this movie was bringing across for the entire runtime screeches to a halt and basically reverses itself in the last 10 minutes. Cassie dies. She dies at the hands of Al Monroe, and in a grisly fashion, they burn her body as a joke. As soon as Cassie dies, the main character of this story, we make jokes about it. They make jokes about how, ooh, Al killed the stripper. They make jokes of, oh, she looks really fucked up under that pillow. They make jokes of, oh, don't worry, Al. Your life's going to be okay. And then they go burn her body. I understand that Al gets arrested at the end of the movie, but that's basically saying, don't worry, guys, let the cops deal with it. How are we supposed to know that Al Monroe is going to get the full extent of the U.S. judicial system? I just think it's bullshit. I just think it's ridiculous that a story like this, with what it's trying to say, ends with 2 dead victims and the message of, don't worry, the cops will handle it. If the cops could handle it, why didn't they handle it back when Nina was assaulted in the first place? It just seems like this ending to subvert our expectations for the sake of doing so, not for the sake of the story. The story is absolutely destroyed by doing this, by saying that Cassie sacrificed her life to let the cops deal with Al Monroe. She could have just went there with the tape in the first place and been like, this is Al Monroe. I can verify all these people. In this video, a crime is taking place. But no, she waits until after she dies to set up this elaborate after-death scheme that's supposed to make us feel very triumphant of, oh, Cassie won. Did she? She's dead and she got burned and her ashes are floating down a stream. I just feel like this movie really wasted the opportunity to say the message that it wanted to say, and I just really wanted to like it so much because I loved 90% of it, and then I was just so taken back. I was waiting the whole time for Cassie to be faking and wake up and stab Al Monroe. I understand it's not realistic, but this movie that you've set up, it's not realistic what's happened so far, so why should we, in the last 10 minutes, compromise the whole movie for the sake of realism? So I just think it's ridiculous. I don't want to say this is a bad movie, because it's not. Carey Mulligan's performance is absolutely fantastic. I'd honestly say this movie is like an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, but just those last 10 minutes, it's like the worst possible ending on a really good movie. So it's almost like, if I can compare it to anything, this movie is Game of Thrones. So know what you're getting yourself into, and yeah. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. A like, subscribe would go so far. And yeah, I just hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening. Take care.